Okay, let's discuss, class, the nature of a research. So when you say research, this comes from the French word searcher, which means to search or to seek. And that's what you are doing right now as you write your concept paper. You are searching for your research problem. You are searching for the background of your study. And at the same time, that's what we are going to do when we gather our data. We are going to seek for the solution of the
Ma'am, excuse
problem
me po.
identified. Yes?
Limos po present. Kakabalik na po ng wifi namin.
Okay, sige. Na,
Thank you.
sige. Now, let's talk about the characteristics of research. Kasi itong nasa baba, ito yung mga characteristics of research. Class, do not forget that research follow series of stages before its completion. And it's started with identification of a problem. Therefore, research, class, is systematic. Okay, so now we are doing identification of the problem, and at the same time, you're trying to formulate your research title. So all the other steps follow if you're going to accomplish the first ones. Now, research is also scientific. This is based, okay, Kurt. This is based, class, upon principles and methods of science. Especially if we are doing experimental research, you cannot make your own procedure unless that is, class, tested and proven and widely accepted in the scientific community. Okay? So everything should be based on science. And research is empirical, which means that the researchers themselves experience that certain situation or phenomenon, or it's the researchers mismo who do the observation and at the same time conduct the experiment. Okay? Sundin. Okay. So it's okay. And also, yes, sige kasi tapos na tayo mag-discuss nito last time. Okay lang. Sige, we have also formal. Research, class, is formal because this is, wait. It is designed with definite form and format. Nag-chat kasi si ma'am. Yes. Na 20 na kayo lahat. 20 groups for research. Again, I'll be teaching you the format that we follow for the institution. And I will also teach you the APA format. Okay? Kasi our format sa institution is anchored in the APA format. Now, research is also critical. We do critical analysis and investigation, and we do careful and precise judgment over our results. So, hindi basta-basta, ito yung results namin, and ito yung interpretation. You really have to make careful and precise judgments over this. Now, last time sa section C, I asked them, is research beneficial? So, sa inyo, matik na talaga ito, no? Again. Wait lang. I'll just answer, ma'am, yes. Okay, again, is research beneficial? Definitely yes. All the things in our surroundings, in our environment are actually products of research. Our gadgets, the things that we use now, our drugs, the things you do in the laboratory are all products of research. So definitely, research is really beneficial. Now let's talk about the kinds of research. We have basic, applied, and empirical. When you decide to do a basic research, class, it means you just want to understand the principles, the reasons why human behave like this. Okay? Like you just want to satisfy your curiosity over a certain thing. Example, you just want to know what makes people motivated to go to work and do things with their jobs. Okay, so like when you decide to make research about job satisfaction, are they satisfied or not, that is a basic research. Okay, we don't really solve a problem here. Instead, we just want to know something, we just want to understand something. That's a basic research. So another thing, relationship between emotional quotient and leadership skills. So this is another thing na satisfying our intellectual curiosity. We just want to know if there is a relationship between the emotional quotient of a person to his or her leadership skills. Kung tumaas ba yung emotional quotient niya, yung EQ niya, tataas din ba ang kanyang leadership skills or the other way around? So again, no addressing a problem, but you want to know the underlying principles, the reasons why human behave this way. And then influence of stress levels and how often students engage in academic cheating. So this is another one. We don't really solve cheating, but we want to know if there is the influence of the stress levels of the students, why they engage in academic cheating. That's basic research for you. However, if you decide to really solve a particular problem, then you are doing applied research. Okay? Like when you want to determine the cause of low morale of the people working in a certain organization and you want to help them with that low morale, then that's applied research. We are trying to solve that problem. Or prevention of bullying is another one. Or in case of experimental research, we are trying to discover vaccines or drugs. For example, COVID-19, that is still applied research. Kasi we are trying to solve, like example, the pandemic. Applied research ang tawag dyan. Okay? So look at your concept paper if you have started that already and try to identify whether you are proposing a basic or an applied research or an empirical one. When you say empirical, I told you a while ago that this is based on your own observation, on your own actual experience, or on your own experiment. So we have direct data here and we are dealing with population samples. Example, we are going to conduct a survey on the residents of General Santos City about a certain topic. We are going to do population samples. When you say residents of General Santos City, it is not necessary for us to give our questionnaire to all the residents, but we are just going to get samples from the population. And empirical researches class are used, generally use estimation, and at the same time, we are doing hypothesis testing. Okay, here for our empirical research. But actually in the research itself and during the defense, no one will actually ask you what kind of research are you doing, like whether you're doing basic, applied, or empirical research. What the panelist will ask you is the classification of research. Is your research qualitative or quantitative? So as early as now, you have to know the difference between the two. So from the name qualitative, we don't have numerical data. Kasi not everything can be quantified. Examples of things that cannot be quantified, we have the experiences, the beliefs of the example residents of General Santos City. We cannot assign numbers for that. We cannot count it. We cannot quantify it. So everything will be linguistic data only. Linguistic data means these are products of interview. So that will be under qualitative research. So our aim when we are going to conduct qualitative research is to have in-depth understanding about human behavior. Kasi when we get to assign numbers, we are going to be limited with just the statements or the questions that we ask them sa questionnaire natin. Unlike qualitative research, when we conduct interview, we are going to give freedom to our participants on how they will answer our questions and gaano ba karami yung sasabihin nila. They have the freedom. So we have to, we can have class and in-depth understanding of the human behavior. Therefore, that can be an advantage of doing a qualitative research. We can understand and we can study complex aspects of person's experience. If we ask them what's their experience while they are working with COVID-19 patients, then we can extract all their experiences. Hindi siya malilimit kagaya nung nalimit na questions in our questionnaires. Okay? And then fewer restrictions or assumptions are placed on the data to be collected. Sa quantitative research kasi, especially when we are going to make our questionnaire, we have restrictions. Kung ano lang yung ating isasali sa questionnaire, yun lang yung matatanong natin sa ating participants, and at the same time, their answers will be limited. I believe tayong lahat, once in our life, nakapag-answer tayo ng survey form. And yung mga survey form minsan, ay most of the time uses Likert scale, yung may 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So nalilimit yung sagot natin dyan. Okay, unlike our qualitative research again, that since not everything is quantified, we can ask them a lot of questions and they can answer as freely as possible. Okay, now this is good for exploratory research and at the same time hypothesis generation. When you say exploratory research, example experience, we can explore the experiences of our participants. We are not going to be limited by things. Ma-explore talaga natin from start to finish yung lahat ng experiences nila. And this is also good for hypothesis generation. Example, you don't really have a background on what's going on in that phenomenon or situation. So if we are going to ask people with their experiences, then we can have the idea, ito pala yung nangyayari sa kanila. Now, if you're going to do example, quantitative research, makakapag-generate na tayo ng hypothesis coming from the results of the qualitative research. So by the way, when you say hypothesis, these are educated guess. These are tentative solutions to our problems. So example, problem natin, COVID-19. We want to prevent, to stop the spread of this virus. Now we are going to propose a solution for that, and that is called the hypothesis. But take note that it's educated, meaning there should be background to it. Bakit mo nasabi na ito yung solusyon sa problema? Yan. Okay? So ito yung mahe-help sa atin ng qualitative research. It's good for hypothesis generation. Okay? Para may background tayo with our problem, and we'll have background also on what solutions to be proposed. Okay? Now, nasabi ko na to kanina in qualitative research, since we are doing interviews, the participants are free on how they answer the questions, what language are they going to use, and they are free kung mahaba ba or konti lang yung sasabihin nila. Okay? Now, what's the disadvantage of doing a qualitative research? Since this is linguistic data, it will be difficult for us to validate their answers. We don't know whether the answers of our participants are truthful or not. Yun yung problema natin. Validity and reliability. And at the same time, during the analysis will be more subjective. Kasi nga linguistic data ito. And kung babasahin natin siya tapos lalagyan natin ng meaning, nasa sa atin na yun how we perceive what they say during the interview. So magiging subjective yung analysis natin with the data. And there will be data overload. I told you a while ago na they are free to answer. We are asking them open-ended questions and they are free to answer that. So kung mahaba na masyado yung sinabi nila, wala tayong magagawa. We will have really data overload. And the analysis for this will consume a lot of time. Kasi yung mga answers ng ating participants for qualitative research will be given meanings. Okay? So time consuming talaga. It will take a long time to analyze. Okay? So, isipin nyo ngayon kung ano ba, okay lang bang gumawa kayo ng qualitative research? Try to look at your concept papers. Okay? If mahirapan sa tingin ninyo, mahihirapan kayo with the qualitative research, then you may do quantitative research. Okay? Quantitative research. So definitely, it's the other way around. We have numerical data here, and we are going to employ mathematical or statistical models to analyze our results. Okay? We have the hypothesis, our educated guess, our tentative solution to your problem. And we are going to test it, example, during the experiment or during the observation. And as we get or obtain the data, we are going to analyze it. But this will be more objective since we are going to use, again, statistics or other mathematical techniques. Okay? So that has become the advantage of quantitative research. It allows us to measure and analyze our data. The analysis of the findings will be more objective since we are guided with mathematical and statistical principles. Okay? And we can test how our hypothesis class. Ano yung problema? If you're going to conduct a quantitative research, most of the time, especially for experimental research, we don't study things in their natural setting. You're going to do antibacterial study, which should be given to human. We don't give directly our agent, our substance to human subjects. Instead, we only do in vitro testing, which is actually not in its natural setting. Meron din tayong laboratory animals. Instead of using human subjects, we have laboratory animals. So again, most of the time, we don't study things in their natural settings. And at the same time, we need large amount of samples. Even in surveys or even in experiments, so surveys, you don't do survey to 5 people only. So we need a lot more of that for us to consider our results accurate and reliable. Okay? Questions so far about quanti and quali research? Baka may part kayong na-confuse dyan. So alam nyo naman siguro, automatic kapag meron kayong numerical data, automatic yan, quanti na agad yan. Pero, we should know kung anong klaseng quanti or quali yan. So, ito class, descriptive to correlational, quanti ito ha, quanti. The next thing that we need to identify, types of research. Ano ba yan siya? Quanti-descriptive, quanti-experimental, or quanti-descriptive correlational? Ilan ang sample needed para ma-consider as accurate? What is this? Experimental research or a descriptive one wherein you're going to conduct survey? Kapag mag-conduct ng survey, we will employ statistical technique to compute for the sample. It is dependent on the number of the population. Okay? So I'll teach you that also. Again, I'll teach you that also how to identify the correct number of participants. Okay, and then itong nasa last class, mga quali ito. So if you are asked class, kasi magtatanong talaga yung panel sa defense, what is your research design? You have to clearly identify if your research design is quantitative descriptive, quantitative experimental, quantitative, by the way, correlational is under descriptive. So we call it quantitative descriptive correlational study. Or kung quali naman, qualitative ethnographic study or qualitative phenomenological study. Okay, let's discuss them one by one para tama yung may sasagot nyo when you are asked what is the research design of your study. Okay, when you say descriptive research, from the name itself, we just want to provide a description on our population or a description about the situation or the phenomenon. Yun lang yung gusto natin for descriptive research. Provide a description. Example, finding the most frequent disease that affects the children of a town. Example, punta kayong Malungon, check nyo doon, ano kaya yung pinakamaraming helmets na nag-i-infest sa mga bata dito? That's a descriptive study. Kasi we are providing a description of the population. Yung mga bata, ano yung frequent na sakit nila? Ano yung frequent na makikita mong helmets sa kanila? That's it. Or yung mga study about knowledge, attitude, and practices. Yung pinakita ko sa inyo last time, class na study about knowledge, attitude, and practices on PPE-related waste disposal. That is under descriptive. What's the goal? The goal is to describe the knowledge of the residents sa Jensen sa pag-dispose ng waste. So at the end of their study, nag-provide sila ng description kung low ba or high yung level of knowledge ng kanilang mga respondents. That is also true for the attitude and the practices. Okay? So again, ang tawag niyan, quantitative descriptive research. Quantitative ha kasi in your questionnaire, you can get numbers there. You can have numerical data. And it's descriptive kasi we are trying to describe something. Okay? So for quantitative descriptive, most of the time, our respondents are unaware that they are being observed. So they will act naturally as they do in their everyday lives. Especially for observational research. And this is less expensive compared to, syempre, experimental research. Kung you are just going to do survey, then the cost of your research will concentrate more on the printing, on the data gathering. Okay? So again, unlike experimental research wherein you need a lot of things from chemicals to equipment. Okay? And as it is used to describe and not to make any conclusion, it is to start the research with it. So purely description. The research will start with a description of your problem, a description of the situation or that group of people, and then at the end of research, ganun pa rin, you will provide description about the findings of your study. Now, what's the downside of doing a quantitative descriptive research? This requires more skill, especially if you're going to make your own questionnaire. By the way, you have the option to make your own questionnaire or to adapt a questionnaire. Pag meron kayong makita na existing questionnaire that you think is suitable also for your study, you can adapt that. But if kahit anong ginawa ninyong pag-research, wala talaga kayong makitang questionnaire, then that's the time you make your own. And if you're going to make your own questionnaire, that requires skill, and that will require you to have it validated by experts. And do not forget, since magpapa-validate kayo sa experts, nire-remind ko talaga yung students ko neto kasi minsan nagte-thank you lang. Itong mga validators class, you are using their time, their effort, and their expertise. So they have to be properly compensated. So isalin niyo siya sa budget ninyo. Pero yung pagbayad sa validators, it's up to them kung magkano yung ipapabayad nila. You have to ask them also. Okay? Sa school, we require at least 3 validators if you're going to make your own questionnaire. Okay, 3 validators. Now, another disadvantage of doing this is the response rate is low. Alam natin yung lahat. Pag may pinapasagutan sa atin na questionnaire, parang tinatamad tayo mag-answer niyan. O kaya busy tayo. So, you expect class na when you're going to distribute your questionnaire, may magre-refuse talaga yan to answer. And at the same time, merong okay, pero ang tagal nilang answeran yung inyong questionnaire. Malapit na ang deadline, hindi pa sila nagsasaulit sa inyo ng questionnaire. So that's our problem. Response rate is low. And at the same time, results can change over the period of time. Example, in the case of knowledge of the residents of Jensan about dengue. Merong mga studies niyan dati. Yung mga knowledge nila sa over dengue, prevention, whatever, lahat about dengue. Pwede yan siya mag-change over time. So yung results nila dati may not be true now. Kasi people can be educated and thus mag-change yung level of knowledge doon. Okay? So yun lang yung disadvantage. Hindi as in permanent yung results ng research. Hindi siya totally tama as time goes by. Okay? Now, if you want to do experimental research class, then it's not just about working in the laboratory, ha? As long as you're controlling a group and you are giving intervention, that will become an experimental research. Okay? So this one is objective, systematic, and controlled investigation. And our goal really here, bakit nag-move? Our goal for experimental research is to establish cause and effect relationship. Okay, kung meron bang effect itong example substance na ito dito sa isang variable, yun yung ina-establish natin for experimental research. Hindi kagaya ng descriptive na you will just describe, mataas yung knowledge nila sa dengue, mataas yung knowledge nila sa COVID-19, but wala tayong cause and effect relationship na ini-establish doon. Dito, meron talaga, like example, you have your plant material and then you want to test its antibacterial activity against Escherichia coli, then cause and effect yun. Tinitingnan natin kung ito bang plant material mo magkukause ng death or prevention of growth ng bacteria. That's the advantage of experimental research. What's the disadvantage? Artificiality. Yung sabi ko kanina, we don't really study things in their natural setting. So since it is unethical to give your plant material directly to human subjects, most of the time we do in vitro studies or we do animal testings. So that's artificiality for you. And then we have feasibility. This one is an expensive study, especially if you need a lot of chemicals and not a lot of machines and equipment. And pwedeng hindi siya magiging feasible because of the lack of budget, lack of machines or equipment. Yan yung problem natin with experimental research. Okay? So if you're going to do that in your concept paper, make sure, class, na you have evaluated already the procedures sa study mo. kung feasible ba or not. Doable ba siya sa school or not. Baka wala tayong gamit sa school. Pero okay naman kahit walang gamit sa school as long as there is an accessible na example, organization that can do the experimentation. Meron silang machine, accessible sa atin, malapit lang sa atin. Pwede naman kahit wala siya sa school. And then, unethical. So even if we don't really give our agents, our substance directly to human subjects, please take note that animals do have rights also. So we have to consider ethics also for this. Okay? So the simplest experimental design class includes the following. Meron talaga yung two variables, independent variable and dependent variable. And we need to establish that one even in your title. You have to determine what are the predictor variable. Ano yung magkukos ng outcome. That's the independent variable. And syempre, the outcome is the dependent variable. And in terms of the participants, we group them together. And the list, we have two groups, control and experimental group. So sa control, example, antibacterial activity, sa control, pwede namang kung zone of inhibition yung pinag-uusapan natin dito, pwede namang example, water lang yung ilagay doon sa ang tawag niyan, yung sa nakalimutan ko tuloy, yung paper na nilalagyan natin ng drug or yung agent. So pwedeng water lang. And ilalagay natin sa Petri dish and see whether it can prevent or kill the bacteria. Now, kung sa experimental group naman, ito yung magre-receive talaga ng plant material being studied. So at least two groups. Pero most of our experimental studies sa school involve three groups. Meron tayong, syempre, experimental group, the one that will receive the plant material or the substance being studied. And then meron tayong positive control na tinatawag, wherein we give our subject the agent that is already accepted in the market and is being proven to exhibit that certain action. Example, kung antibacterial talaga siya. Okay? And meron din tayong negative control. So, syempre, from the name itself, negative, wala tayong ini-expect na activity for that. Okay? So, yan yung mostly ginagawa for our experimental studies sa school. Okay? So, you can do this. Matrabaho lang ito sa laboratory. Medyo expensive siya in terms of gamit, but it will be fulfilling for you to do since, especially if it's very medtech related. Okay? And then, pwede din naman kayong mag-conduct ng correlational research. From the name itself, correlational, what we are trying to study here is relationship of one variable to another. Pag sinabing relationship, yan yung tinatawag natin directly proportional ba siya na pag tumaas ang isang variable, tataas din yung outcome. Or inversely proportional siya. Kung tataas yung isa, bababa yung isa. Okay? That's correlational. Example, yung study kanina class about stress and cheating. That is actually a correlational study. Kung tumaas ba ang level of stress ng estudyante, does it mean tataas din yung tendency nila to cheat or bababa? So yan yung hinahanap in that study. But since we're talking about relationship, this will fall under correlational research. We call this quantitative since we have numbers here. Quantitative descriptive correlational research. This is still descriptive kasi we're trying to describe the stress levels of, example, our respondents and their tendency to cheating. And at the same time, we are getting the relationship. So we have two ways here to do the research. Pwede siya actually experimental, depende sa study. And most of the time, it's through survey. Okay, so what are the advantages of doing correlational research? You can collect more information at one time. So just like this, you can get their stress level, you can get their tendency to cheat, and at the same time, you can check the relationship. So marami kang pwedeng ma-collect na information because pwede kang mag-study ng wide range of variables. So pwede kang maraming variables here for the correlational study. And aside from that, yung relationship talaga may establish natin. And there are things that we cannot easily get in the laboratory. We can do that by doing correlational research. But what is the disadvantage here? Since this is a descriptive study, we don't establish cause and effect relationship. There is still description of the variables, and at the end, we just want to know if merong relationship. Hindi natin chine-check whether one variable causes another. Okay? Sige. Questions about class, the quantitative types of research. Again, we have descriptive, experimental, and we have the descriptive correlational study. Before we'll move on to the qualitative types of research. Actually, na-mention ko na ito last time. Pero para mas maintindihan nyo, and at the same time, alam nyo kung saan kayo lulugar with your concept paper. Individual yung concept paper ha, pero we're going to send that to Ma'am Dalig by group para mapilian among the submitted concept paper kung ano yung ipupush ng grupo. Okay? Walay pangutana. So kung wala, let's talk about qualitative ethnographic research. So ang ginagawa dito, you are going to observe or conduct a research about a group of people. And what you're trying to look into is the culture or their tradition. So I know someone who really lived with a certain tribal people here in South Cotabato for a certain period of time. She lived there. She observed their traditions and their costumes. And she also did interview, example, with the leaders in that community and asked them how they do things. Like, for example, how they diagnose diseases or how they cure diseases. So, yun yung result ng, ayan yung ginawa niya sa kanyang research. Ethnographic ang tawag dyan. But this is qualitative research since we cannot quantify customs and traditions. You will have purely linguistic data. You will write about what you have observed in their customs and traditions. And you will also write about the interviews that you are going to make sa kanila. Okay? So, ethnographic ang tawag dyan. Now, for phenomenological research naman, ito yung marami sa school. Again, phenomenological research class. This is marami sa school kasi this talks about experience. Pag phenomenological automatic experience, yan ha, you're going to interview your respondents about their experiences sa isang situation, sa isang phenomenon. So maraming yan last year, yung mga klase-klase sa bawat department. Meron talagang phenomenological research, experience ng mga medtech sa hospital during the pandemic, experience ng mga medtech sa public health sector, yung mga nagwo-work sa DOH, experience kung sa ibang department, experience ng mga pharmacists, experience ng mga nurses during pandemic. So yun. Under sila sa phenomenological research. But, ang tawag dyan, linguistic data ito. Hindi din natin ma-quantify yung experience. Okay? So we have two that you can choose for our qualitative research if you want to do that. Now, for research techniques class, for qualitative research, you can do interviews, syempre, one-on-one interview, or you can do focus group discussion. Yung interview nyo is by group. Igugrupo nyo together yung mga participants ninyo. Yan yung focus group. For survey, this will be quantitative. Yung experimentation will be quantitative. The observation can either be qualitative or quantitative depending on what you are observing. And what you are doing now is actually desk research, especially for the RRL na part, review of related studies and literatures. That's the desk research. Okay? So ito yung mga research techniques na pwede nating gawin. Okay, so that's all for chapter 2. Any question or clarification? Wala. Sure, good.